TheChowTimePod. It's your host, Red. I got a video today from Courtney Ryan. I haven't done one from her in a while. And it's masculinity and femininity content has gone too far. I somewhat agree. You know, there's so many people jumping onto this topic that there's plenty of women that have no clue what true masculinity is, nor true femininity is. And there's plenty of men that also don't know the true of each either. So please subscribe down below. I really appreciate that. And let's get to that chow time.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Courtney Ryan, and today we are reacting to a TikTok. But before we start, I need to start by saying this. Whenever I do reaction videos, I always get comments that say something along the lines of, well, people don't actually think this, or this is only happening online. And while yes, there is absolutely some truth in that, I think
I get that a lot too. Like, you only hear this online because you're going through that content. So of course you're going to see these things. And I'm like, no, I see it in real life and into my day-to-day too.
It's important to also call out the fact that as a society, we are spending entirely too much time online. More than I would like to admit, are chronically online. So I would encourage you to do yourself a favor and get off the internet and make sure that this isn't you. When you're chronically online, you start to believe the things you see online. And it turns an online problem into a real life problem.
No, I can
So I just want to start by saying that. And the reason that I do these reaction videos is to try and provide a teachable moment or to just bring us all back down to earth a little bit because God knows we need it. So let's watch this and then reconvene.
You have to understand, men do not have feelings. They lie, they can manipulate, they can use you, abuse you, and not feel guilty. Men are not like women there.
But women can do that too.
Yeah.
I just want to say that.
Like, using and abusing, it's just people. Men and women do it to each other.
Not emotional. In some way, I would say don't even think they have a heart. Maybe the heart is beating just to have them, breathing and everything, but do not look at men the way that you look at yourself. Men are not as women. And men can be intimate with many women and do not have soul ties, do not get hurt, and be completely normal because it's in their biology. They need to spread the seed. They do not feel attachment. For them, it's just an exercise. Imagine if I have...
All right, she's going out a little like harshly. Like, yeah, we like sex and we don't get attached the same way women do, but doesn't mean we just... go around fucking all the time and like not loving anybody. Like, we're not just fucking stone cold sex machines.
Mosquito bite. If I'm sitting at the nature in my garden and a mosquito will bite me, what will happen? Automatically the blood rushes there and I feel irritation. I feel itch and I want to itch that bite, right? So I'm going to itch it very, very, very much until the itch is gone. Then I'm going to leave it. And after...
That is a horrible advice. You do not itch an itch until the itch is gone. That's how you get fucking lesions and, ulcers on your skin.
1-2 days, I'm not even going to remember about it because the bite is gone. The same is men who want to be intimate with you. For them, it's just a little itch. Oh, it's itchy now. Oh, okay. Oh, it's done. Oh, I forget about her. Now, okay, let's do business.
Okay, she's not wrong about some men, but it's funny. It's the men you're choosing. This is the reason why a lot of women are going through this particular thing where they're getting men that they just want to scratch an itch, that they want to just get in there. Once they're in there, I'm out, right? And it's the men you're choosing because there's plenty of men out there, plenty that would love to get in and stay in and, be with you.
Let's go out. Let's get this done. Let's go for a drive. Let's all show me. Okay, great. Men are men. We are not judging them. We are not bashing them. We are talking about the facts.
So you guys know I normally use my reaction videos as a springboard to kind of talk about other topics and other things. So not everything I say is going to be directed at this creator specifically. I think it just kind of opens up a bigger conversation here into some topics that we can discuss. The first one being men versus the men you choose. I want to start by saying this because I think there's a big difference between saying something applies to all men and something just being true for the men that you choose. Which is what I see a lot of men and women doing online nowadays.
I agree.
Saying things like,
both men do
all
it too.
men are trash. Well, no, the men you choose are trash. Or all men cheat. No, the men you choose cheat. Or men don't have feelings. They can use you, abuse you, and not feel guilty. Men are not like women. They are not emotional. No, maybe the men you choose are emotionally unavailable and are only looking for a hookup, and you think you can change his mind, so you think that all men are going to use you and abuse you.
No, she's right. Yeah, women love to be able to change people's mind or think they can change men's mind, think they can change that bad boy, that type into a loving husband. And it never really happens. Okay, I'm not going to say never, but it hardly ever happens.
Not true. And I have a hard time understanding how we don't see this. You know, if all of these negative things are true for the people that you are actively going after and choosing, maybe we should start to evaluate why it is that we're choosing poorly. Now, of course, this obviously doesn't apply to everyone per usual, and there's always nuance, but generally speaking here, if you consistently fall into the same negative patterns in relationships and dating, then the solution is to get to the root of what is causing it, which probably starts with you. And that's not to bash anybody or make anybody feel bad, but if you're constantly choosing poorly, the first step for me would be to evaluate why I'm choosing the people I'm choosing. There are reasons.
I mean, this works for men too. If you're constantly being used, constantly being, like treated as a second-rate citizen, there's part of it is you. Yes, women are a little bit more callous nowadays, but it also has to do with you. If you don't match the criterias, you don't match the looks or whatever it is that these women are looking for, of course it's going to be like that. So there is a degree of what you bring and how you offer yourself to other people.
Why you're attracted to what you're attracted to. But back to the video here, I think there are pieces of wisdom and things that could be absolutely true in what she said. Men and women are different, and studies have shown that men and women experience intimacy and the emotions that do or do not surface afterwards a little bit differently. You know, I am not personally an evolutionary biologist. I'm not an expert on this subject, as I'm sure most of you are not either. So I'm not going to pretend to know all the facts about soul ties or pair bonding or attachment or any of those things. I can certainly do my due diligence and do some research and make a video about it for you guys. But to sit here right now in my current state, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know that. Now, I do think she makes a good point about men who just want to be intimate with you. Just because a man wants to be intimate with you doesn't mean that they want anything more or feel an attachment to you.
This is true.
Which I think a lot of women have a hard time understanding, and maybe that was the whole point of this clip that I reacted to. I know this is a short clip that we're reacting to here that is probably taken for something more long form, I imagine, so we have to keep this in mind as well. I'm just using this as, again, a springboard to introduce some different points and topics that I think are important. The next thing I want to talk about is that men do have emotions. This is such a huge issue that I see with a lot of the masculinity or femininity content that's out there. It's one of the many reasons why I believe so many men feel like they have to keep all of their emotions bottled up and are terrified of being open and vulnerable with people. I'm sure a lot of you hear me say that word and you automatically put your guard up or feel triggered by it. For some of you, this might be because of the way it's been weaponized against you within your romantic relationships.
It has. For men, it is a common thing for your emotions to be weaponized against you by other men, by women, and especially by women.
For others, it might just be because of the way that it's condemned by our society and social media. Now, I do think this has gotten a little better than it used to be for sure, but then I see a video like this and I think, what on earth is this? Men don't have emotions? How can you get online and say, men don't have emotions? Are we serious? This is why I have to think this was taken from something more long form that maybe is coming across a different way. And
see, no, I doubt it, Courtney. Most women actually think men are just robots, disgusting sexual robots. We have no emotions. All we think about is sex, which is somewhat correct. And that we don't care about what we do to others, about women's emotions and things like that. And it's funny, it's because when she touched on it, like, yes, it's the men you're choosing that are like this. There's plenty of men that are quite emotional. It's called the simps and all the little, soy boys that you see all the time that are like major liberals and major, wokies. they're constantly crying about like the stupidest of shits. So yeah, there's those guys, but nobody cares about those guys. Those guys are not the guys that are in your radar.
In this short video than maybe it's intended to be. But maybe that's just me giving the benefit of the doubt as I do.
I agree.
And
It's just
gonna
you
blow
giving
up
the
in my
benefit of the
face.
doubt.
I don't know. You can let me know. Just to elaborate on this a little bit and provide some examples here, suppressing your emotions can lead to depression and anxiety. And for men especially, it can increase their risk of suicide.
She's 100% correct, man. This is why you need good boys. You know, boys in your corner to be able to talk to, share some of these things with. And yes, I know it's not easy to be sharing some of these things with your boys, but you guys got to find someone that is that close to you, that you can build that kind of connection to where you can unload some of this emotion and issues. Because yeah, bottling it up, it's horrible. You know, after my car accident, I gained like 80 pounds, almost 80 pounds. I'm usually like 145, 140, and then after my like a year after my car accident, I got up all the way to 215, and it was depression. I didn't talk to it about with my ex-wife. I didn't talk to it with a therapist or anything, but I was ridiculously depressed, and just like kept on thinking to myself, I'm like, man, how am I gonna be able to handle things? I lost an arm. You know, I'm not able to do everything physically like I used to. How can I make money? How can I support the family? How can I still do these things? You know, and all I could do is just think about it to myself. I didn't talk to it about it with anybody. I didn't really try to solve it with anybody. I just internalized everything. And it was probably one of the hardest moments in my life, like trying to deal with that.
Men are much more likely to end their own lives than women are.
That
In
we are.
2018 alone, men ended their own lives about 3.56 times more often than women did. Aside from this, though, think about all of the other emotions that exist. That's just one, big statistic that I think we talk about a lot as a society, of how men end their own lives more than women do. So when you say that and when you hear that statistic, how can you then say that men don't have emotions? But again, think of all the other emotions that exist: joy, excitement, amusement, surprise, embarrassment, jealousy, anger.
Plenty of men are angry. I mean, especially a lot of red pill men, a lot of manosphere men that just got into the space. They haven't fully internalized all of this information. They haven't fully, worked all this information for themselves. So yeah, they're going to be angry. I mean, fuck, I'm still angry here and there. And anger is such an emotion that overtakes most people, women and men. You know, like we tell men to control your emotions better. Anger is not a healthy thing for men, because men get violent, and they can get violent very, very quickly.
Pleasure, admiration, desire. I mean, I could go on and on. You're telling me that men don't feel any of those things? I think people hear the word emotion or emotional and automatically assume it to be a negative thing. I think
Correct.
We incorrectly see emotion as the opposite of rational, hence why it isn't really a compliment if someone sees you as emotional. People use
100%, she's right. Yes, how even us in the manosphere uses it when someone is emotional. It's, yes, they're not being rational, they're being irrational. They're letting their emotions overtake, and it's like somewhat wrong and right at the same time, because sometimes you just can't help but be emotional. You feel what you feel, but even if you can control it, you're gonna still feel it. That's the thing. So when women, and I guess mostly women, say that men don't feel anything, just because we're stoic and we don't show what's going on in our faces and in our like the little things we do, does not mean we're not feeling something inside our brains and inside our emotions. This is the dumbest thing that people seem to want to push, that men don't feel anything because they're so stoic. They have to be stoic. They have to be these things. Yes, we are some of these things. You should be some of these things. It does not mean you just have to be a robot and not feel anything.
this as a way to insult each other or
I agree.
to, discredit someone almost. Oh, he's so
That's how the manosphere uses it. This is exactly how the red pill and the manosphere uses it, is used to kind of somewhat insult someone else. When someone gets a little emotional, shares a little bit of emotion, it's seen as such a like wussy thing in most of the manosphere, that it's looked down upon. But it's looked down upon in like that public way when it's exchanges between other people. But we also tell, like, at least for me personally, I tell you guys, it's nothing wrong with that, but you have to pick and choose where it's going. You got to pick and choose the brotherhood that you're choosing to tell this about, share some of these things about, so that they can help support you. Men going around just sharing their emotions out in public to everyone, yes, that makes us look like pieces of shit. It make it look like you're a wussy. It makes it look like you're, just not thick enough skin to survive society, which there's a lot of people that are like that, men and women nowadays. Just the simplest of little things, they can't control the small little anger or the small little minute facts that someone did something to them or did something that they didn't like, and it's crazy why it's that way. But it's somewhat understandable. This is why I say it's like 50-50. It's a good thing and a bad thing, but yes, the manosphere uses it mostly as a bad thing, because we point out that other men are emotional. They're too tied to their emotions and not thinking logically, especially when they're on podcasts and in public.
emotional. I don't trust what he says or does. But the truth here, and the facts, if we're going to talk about facts, is that you don't have to be one or the other, and it's actually beneficial to have elements of both.
I 100%
Emotional
agree.
and rational are not necessarily opposites, as I mentioned, but rather two different aspects of human cognition and experience. Emotions refer to our subjective feelings or affective state, while rationality then relates to our ability to think logically, to engage in critical thinking, and to make reasoned decisions. Now, while emotions and rationality can influence and interact with each other, they serve completely different functions and aren't inherently, contradictory to each other. Emotions play a very valuable role in our lives. They inform our values, our motivations, our social connections. They're important. And then rationality, on the other hand, might help us analyze information, weigh evidence, and make logical decisions based on objective reasoning. But as an individual, being able to strike a balance between emotional intelligence and rationality is where the true magic is. Both are important for decision making and understanding ourselves and the people around us. Recognizing and understanding our emotions while also employing some critical thinking skills can lead to more well-rounded and informed choices. And
This is what a purpose is, guys. This is where men's find their purpose, right? It's a purpose helps them refine some of these things. The rationality of being successful. Yeah, it makes sense to be successful, but not everybody has the emotions to want to be successful. Because remember, you have to sacrifice, you have to work hard, you have to grind, you have to do so many things that emotionally you probably don't want to do. You don't want to deal with some of these things, but rationally, you're going to have to do these things to get where you want to be. But if emotionally, oh, I really want that. I think it's going to do something for me. Like it's going to put me up a notch in society. Oh, it's going to put me up a notch in front of everybody's eyes. It's going to do whatever the hell you want it to do. But you have to put some emotional investment into your purpose and into your grind. It's necessary. I think this is the part where I don't think people aren't successful, because they only see the logical side of being successful. They don't put in the emotional side of being successful, because the emotional side is what kind of keeps you in line, keeps you in check to keep going towards your goal. Because if you have no emotional ties towards something, most people don't really care to keep pursuing it. So you have to have some emotional ties to your purpose and to the things that you want in the future and the things that you want in your life. Like being a passport bro. To become a passport bro, you got to do some things. Do you want to do these things? Emotionally, you might not want to leave the US. You love it here. You love the community. You love wherever it is. But logically, it's probably better to go to the Philippines. It's probably better to go to Vietnam, go to Thailand to find a mate, at least for that purpose of finding a mate. And if you don't want a mate to where you're emotionally invested in finding a mate or emotionally invested in doing something, you're never going to be able to do it. You're never going to do it. You're never even going to get off the ground.
Being a more well-rounded individual. Now, if you don't have the ability to make rational decisions and everything you do is based solely in emotion, that's not necessarily a positive thing either. I think
Correct.
Being emotionally immature is not the goal. Emotional maturity is. So things like being able to actively listen instead of being consumed by your own reactivity. When you see someone react in a very intense way or have high reactivity on something like a podcast or a panel of people, I can think of a ton of YouTube channels to do that kind of thing. It's not a positive thing to be so reactive. You should be able to stay calm and have a rational conversation, even though you're feeling intense emotions or maybe discussing a tense topic.
Correct. You know what? I had someone in my comments saying that I was a little monotoned and I wasn't like animated enough or emotional enough when reacting to some of these things. And it's not like I'm not. Like some of these things, probably upset me, probably make me laugh or do certain things, but I try to keep even keel as best as possible. And of course, you guys see me get a little upset, a little outraged, and here and there. But it's not to the point where I think there's a lot of other content creators who are just so outrageous with their reactions and their thing. It's hard for you to even take it seriously.
But you're also not a robot, so it's okay that you aren't perfect. It's just something that we have to actively work on and work towards. So being emotional or having emotions is not the thing to avoid. It's the inability to handle those emotions or to control the way that you respond and react that I think we need to be a little bit more mindful of. So I hope that me giving all those examples kind of shows you how balance plays a crucial role in being a well-rounded individual. You need rationality, but you also need emotion. And this is something that I think online content is often missing. Not everything needs to be an extreme.
I 100% agree with her. I agree with this. The manosphere, the red pill, all the red passport bros, Midtown. Yes, we do seem to lack a little bit of that emotionality. Is it necessary? I think so. Is it necessary to be showing it all the time? No, but there is a necessary factor to encompass emotions into some of the decisions that we make.
Don't have to fit in one box. And I know I kind of went off in a different direction with this point, and it's not necessarily exactly what the video was saying, but the whole statement of men don't have emotions just kind of sparked a bigger conversation that I wanted to discuss with you guys and let you guys know that having emotions is not a bad thing, and you shouldn't try to suppress that, because I think it's leading to a lot of men feeling isolated, alone, depressed, anxious, which I don't want any of you to be feeling like. So just something to think about. We're going to get back to the video now, but I think it was important to talk about that. And my next point is that I think this femininity and masculinity content has gone too far. Like pretty much anything else, there's always an extreme where they go too far. Now, I do think discussing the elements of masculinity and femininity that could be beneficial in a relationship can absolutely be helpful, but there's a point where some of this content just takes it too far. Saying that men don't have emotions is definitely an example of that. So my advice in all of this would be to think critically about the content that you consume. I hope that when all of you hear men don't have emotions, whether you're sitting there as a man or a woman watching, you're able to really take a step back and think about it on your own. We don't have to agree about everything. I'm not perfect and neither are you, but we should be able to have productive conversations and acknowledge when something fails to include nuance or the human experience. Also, I have to say this: femininity isn't toxic, masculinity isn't toxic, being feminine or being masculine isn't necessarily toxic, but I do think there is
100%. Like she's on, yeah. Just being these things has nothing to do with being toxic or anything. It's the person itself. Like this is where I love how Brian from whatever podcast can I say, there's just toxic people. There's no toxic masculinity. There's no toxic femininity. There's just toxic men and toxic women, and they do very similar toxic things.
such a thing as toxic content about femininity and masculinity. And again, it's when things get taken to an extreme and when they get taken too far. And I think most of my viewers who watch are able to see this, and you can really be rational and think to yourself how saying something like men don't have emotions could be harmful to men and women, and how it's just untrue.
Yeah.
So again, I hope that you're able to recognize this when you see it personally. So to wrap this video up with something I agreed with from the video that we reacted to is that men and women are different. We can acknowledge that, and I agree with that. And I think when you're dating, it's helpful to know how men and women are different, but it's important that we keep an open mind and leave a little room for nuance, and not say things like men don't have emotions. There have just been too many studies done for me to count that completely disprove that statement. So if you're going to be online, hopefully not chronically online, but if you're going to be online, be able to think critically about the content that you're consuming, and maybe take a break from some of the negative or extreme content that you're seeing.
Whew, that was some good chow. That was some solid analysis on her part, and I agree with a good chunk of what she says. And it's the factor of women loving to broad stroke men when it's usually the men that they choose that like fit these criterias. And men do the same thing. Men, we broad strokes women, well, a lot of women, into many things. But the thing is that men do is we do look at the overarching picture of women. Yes, there's experiences that we've experienced ourselves, but then we also see the experiences of others. And that's where we're basing a lot of our generalization from. A lot of women just seem to base it off of their own personal feelings and, their interactions. So please like and subscribe down below. I really appreciate that, and catch you guys next time. Ciao.